3.
Good afternoon, Professor and all friends. My name is Shanty and now I'm going to present my paper entitled Exchange Rate and Economic Growth in Indonesia. And this paper investigates the impact of FDI, capital stock, inflation, and nominal exchange rate on economic growth of Indonesia using the time series data from 1984 to 2013. And here I use the OLS method, or ordinary least square, to check the relationship between the dependent variables and independent variables. I also use the Cochrane-Orcutt's iterative method to correct the autocorrelation. And the result shows that foreign direct investment, or FDI, has significant and positive relationship with the GDP of Indonesia, while the inflation has negative relationship with the GDP of Indonesia, and the capital stock provided by GFCF and nominal exchange rate do not significantly affect the economic growth of Indonesia. I also use the T-square on residuals and GB normality test on residuals to check the home scarcity and normality respectively. And here is my introduction. The relationship between the exchange rate and economic growth recently has been an important subject in economics. And theoretically speaking, that there is a positive relationship between the high exchange rate and economic growth in a country. And most of the previous researchers found that increasing the value of exchange rate is due to the increased demand for the national currency of Indonesia. And here is the figure of the comparison between the nominal exchange rate and economic growth of Indonesia from the 1984 to 2018 and 2013, And this figure shows us that there is a negative relationship between the economic growth and the nominal exchange rate of Indonesia. And I use this literature review from the Haitana and Stefani, Yusuf and Fabrina, Esnowati and Biliana. Regarding to the data collection and methodology, I use the multiple regression analysis to find the relationship between the dependent variable and independent variables. And I use the secondary data that collected from the trustworthy resources from 1984 to 2013. And also here the economic growth is taken as the dependent variables, while FDI, capital stock, inflation, and nominal exchange rate are treated as the independent variables. I use this function to find the relationship between the dependent variables and independent variables. Also, I use the augmented decay-Fuller test to check the unit root properties of the variables. Here is the results from the augmented decay-Fuller statistic test. So we can see all the variables now are integrated, and like economic growth integrated at the 0 level, and FDI integrated at the first difference level. Also GFCF integrated at the second difference level, inflation integrated at the 0 level, and exchange rate integrated at the first difference level. So it means that we can continue to use the OLS model. And the result of the ordinal least square model is here. We found that Durbin-Watson value is 0.59. It means that this model exists the autocorrelation. So to correct the autocorrelation, I use the Cochrane-Orcutt iterative method. And the result of Cochrane-Orcutt is here. And now we can see that the Durbin-Watson value is 1.59. So it means that this model is free from the autocorrelation. So let's take a look at the main results. Here we can see that the FDI has the positive and significant relationship with the GDP or dependent variables. So these numbers means that 1% increase in FDI will raise up the GDP by 1.27%. And also inflation has the significant relationship but negative relationship with the GDP. So it means that 1% increase in inflation will decrease the GDP by 0.27%, while GFCF and nominal exchange rate do not significantly affect. You can see here, no star sign here. So GFCF and nominal exchange rate do not significantly affect to the GDP of Indonesia. And based on the statistic-based RHO difference data, we can see the R square here 0.93. It means that 93% of the variance in the dependent variables is due to the independent variables. And for diagnostic test, I use the GB normality test on residual and chi-square test on residuals to check the normality and heteroscedasticity. And based on the p-value, we can see that the p-value is higher than the critical value. So, the result of this diagnostic test demonstrates that the residuals are normally distributed and it is free from the heteroscedasticity. This is the conclusion and policy implication from my paper. FDI and inflation significantly affect the economic growth of Indonesia, while the capital stock proxide by GFCF and nominal exchange rate do not significantly affect on economic growth of Indonesia. FDI considered as an engine for the economic growth of Indonesia since it has a positive and significant relationship to the GDP. There is need to attract investors by creating peaceful environments in the country. And final conclusion is that moderate inflation is necessary for the growth, but above the specific level, it can lead to the depreciation of the growth. And that is my presentations of the paper. Thank you for your attention.